The Watts family murders. On August 13th, 2018, the suburban stillness of Frederick, Colorado, settled over the homes like a blanket. Neighborhood lights glowed faintly. Sprinklers ticked rhythmically across manicured lawns. Everything looked peaceful and quite ordinary. But beneath that calm facade lay a horror that would soon shock an entire nation. At exactly 1:48 a.m., a white car pulled up to the house at 2825 Saratoga Trail. 34-year-old Shanann Watts stepped out, stiff from a long business trip. Exhausted yet relieved to be home. Best friend Nicole Atkinson waved from the driver's seat as Shanann walked up the driveway, dragging suitcase behind her and disappeared inside. As the door closed, Nicole drove away, unaware that Shanann was walking into the final hours of her life. Hours later, her untouched suitcase would become the first silent alarm that something was terribly wrong. The sun rose. Birds stirred. Life on Saratoga Trail moved forward as usual. Sprinklers, joggers, garage doors humming open. But inside the Watts home, a horrifying truth hid behind the quiet. By 9 a.m., Nicole was texting Shanann repeatedly. No answer. By 10 a.m., Shanann had missed a doctor's appointment. Unthinkable for a woman 28 weeks pregnant. By 11 a.m., Nicole drove to the house and knocked until her hands hurt. Nothing. Her fear sharpened into panic. Shanann's phone rang inside. Her husband, Chris, and the girls, Bella and Celeste, were nowhere to be found. Nicole made a decision. She called the police. When officers arrived, they contacted Shanann's husband, Chris Watts, who claimed he was just moments away. He pulled into the driveway minutes later, walking toward the house with a slow, oddly relaxed stride. His face was expressionless. His voice was flat. His demeanor is strangely calm for a man whose pregnant wife and 2 daughters were missing. Chris unlocked the door. As police entered, he hovered behind them, arms folded, breathing steady. They searched the rooms. The master bedroom was tidy. The basement is quiet. The kitchen is normal. But then the details emerged, the clues that made the officer's skin prickle. Shanann's phone was still on the counter. Her suitcase unpacked. Her purse sat untouched. Her shoes lined neatly by the door. Her wedding ring lay there. Mothers do not leave home without their children. Pregnant women do not leave home without their phones. Police were now dealing with a disappearance that made no logical sense. Chris spoke quickly, too quickly, providing explanations no one had asked for. His tone was breezy, his smile misplaced, his eyes emotionless. Instead of asking for help, instead of demanding answers, he floated through the house like a man performing a script, and the officers noticed. But nothing exposed Chris more clearly than what happened next. Across the street, neighbor Nate had a security camera pointed at the Watts driveway. He invited officers inside to view the footage. On the screen, time-stamped and crystal clear, was Chris at 5:27 a.m., backing his work truck into garage. Something he never did. Loading it, again and again, making 3 separate trips in and out of the house. Chris stood behind the officers, swaying slightly, arms crossed tight, anxiety radiating off him in ripples. Hours later, police learned the next shocking truth. Chris Watts was having an affair. He had been seeing a co-worker, Nicole Kessinger, for weeks. Their messages were flirty, romantic, intimate. He was fantasizing openly about a fresh start, a new life, one without a pregnant wife and 2 small children. Investigators now had a motive. Still, before arresting him, they wanted one more thing, a polygraph. When Chris arrived the next morning, he sat down with a trained FBI polygraph examiner. She gently explained how the test worked, reassured him, and made him comfortable. Before beginning, she said, "If you're telling the truth, this will be the easiest day of your life. If not..." She didn't finish the sentence. Chris failed all major questions, not just by a little, by a landslide. Afterward, detectives confronted him. "You already know we know," they said. Detectives confronted him, using a common interrogation tactic. They suggested Shanann hurt the children, and Chris reacted. He clung to the lie immediately. "She hurt them," he said. "So I killed her." It was a story as flimsy as tissue. Investigators didn't believe it. Shanann's family and anyone who knew her, who'd seen her cradle her daughters, didn't believe it. But he kept lying about the girls. Chris confessed that her body was disposed of at a work site. So investigators began searching the oil field. At the remote site, surrounded by barren fields and steel structures, they found disturbed earth. Beneath it lay Shanann, wrapped in the sheet Chris dragged her with. Not far away, they found 2 oil tanks, both with hatches slightly ajar. Inside each tank, they found the girls, Bella, Cece, 3 and 4 years old, discarded like waste. Even the most seasoned investigators stepped away in tears. Chris was arrested immediately, yet the world had not heard the full truth, not until months later, when investigators visited Chris in prison for an additional interview. They wanted to know everything. This time, Chris cracked open the truth. Shanann never hurt the girls. He killed Shanann first, while she was asleep, by strangling her. Bella walked in afterward. "Daddy, what's wrong with Mommy?" she asked. He did not answer. He didn't answer. He wrapped Shanann in a sheet, loaded her into the truck, then placed the girls in the back seat alive, beside their mother's body. During the drive, the girls asked for breakfast. He handed them their favorite snacks. At the site, he killed Celeste first, then Bella, who begged, "Daddy, no." Then he forced their bodies into the oil tanks and buried Shanann nearby. His calm TV interview now made sense. The empty eyes, the steady voice. He wasn't grieving. In truth, he was a hollow man driven by entitlement and emptiness, willing to sacrifice his own family to preserve his fantasy. In court, Chris stood in chains as Shanann's family delivered emotional statements. The judge called it the most vicious, inhumane crime he had ever seen. 5 life sentences. No parole. Chris nodded calmly, as if accepting a dentist bill. No remorse. No apology. In prison, Chris spends his time reading, writing shallow reflections, and giving interviews that reveal the same emotional emptiness. When asked about regret, he says, "I feel like part of me died that day." He never mentions Shanann, the girls, or unborn baby Nico. Psychologists classify him as a covert narcissist, someone who mimics emotion rather than experiencing it. Today, Shanann and her daughters rest in North Carolina. Their graves are visited by strangers from around the world. Shanann's parents, Frank and Sandy Rzusek, continue to honor their daughter and grandchildren by speaking about domestic violence and hidden danger. Because the most terrifying truth of this case isn't the crime itself. It's how ordinary the monster looked. Chris Watts appeared quiet, polite, unremarkable. But beneath that exterior lived someone willing to annihilate his family to preserve a fantasy. A man who smiled into a camera the morning after murdering his own children. For more deep-dive true crime stories, investigations, and cold case mysteries, subscribe and step into the grid. Because here on Mystery Grid, every story is a puzzle waiting to be solved.